The idea I'd like to share with you is how to transform the law so that it better serves our reality, and so we all work together for the benefit of all. I'd like to begin with a bit of the relevant science that sits behind this legal transformation. First of all, the Earth system is our precious life support system. It is one complex whole. It comprises vital functions that support all of life. The atmosphere and the oceans are two critical circulation systems that are part of the Earth system. We know most about the climate system. We know that the climate system, or a stable climate system, is part of a well-functioning Earth system. We also know that a climate system, a stable climate system, is a common good. It belongs to all of us because it is the very precious basis of all life. We might think of the Earth system and a stable climate system as the planetary software that we all share, the Earth's planetary software that we all share. We understand this to be true. We understand at a very deep level this to be true because we know what it feels like to share the breath of life. As humans, we are part of this living system. Yet we know that our actions have put this living system in peril. However, in law, neither the Earth system nor a stable climate system has legal status. We might think of this as a legal black hole or a legal vacuum. The result is it's very hard to create a legal regime that ensures that we manage human activities to ensure that this Earth system and a stable climate system are not only maintained, but increasingly protected and restored. How do we change this? We must change this. The question is how? The idea that I would like to share with you is that we declare a stable climate system to be the common heritage of humanity and all life, and that we recognize this in international law. Now, this is a big idea, and it's a big idea because it will transform the logic and the purpose of law as it currently is, from legalized rights to exploit, pollute, and degrade the Earth system, to legal responsibilities to care for it and to protect it for the benefit of present and future generations. If implemented well, the common heritage concept has the potential to change the very fundamental relationship between humanity and the Earth system. We might think of this as changing us from efficient resource exploiters to careful stewards or careful Earth trustees. Now, the common heritage concept is not new. It was first developed in the 1960s in international law, and the objective was to apply it to the whole ocean system as a precious, interdependent ecological system for the benefit of all human beings. Unfortunately, ultimately, it was only the deep sea bed that was given legal recognition as a common heritage. However, the legal status of the deep sea bed as a common heritage has gone some way to protecting the deep sea bed from harmful mining. So why does the common heritage concept matter? What does it change? If we don't see and manage our climate system for what it is, we will remain stuck in a system that is really designed for what has become a fatal purpose, and that is ongoing resource exploitation for the benefit of a few. The legal regime for climate change helps us illustrate how dangerous this current situation is. The logic and the purpose of the climate change regime is to legally sanction allowable amounts of pollution into the atmosphere. We might think of it as legally sanctioning a certain amount of harm. It's more like this is a regime that enables us to perhaps do a little less harm a bit more efficiently. The atmosphere is used by states as a useful sink to dump pollutants into. And these pollutants, of course, are sourced from activities within individual state territories. And we might think then of the atmosphere as an open access sink for pollutants. To maintain this system and to maintain the resource exploitation drives climate change. States have agreed under this legal regime to a number of interesting things. They've agreed that they can determine the size or the quantity of their pollution to the atmosphere. They have also decided that they have no legally binding obligation to keep within this limit. They've also agreed that they will not be legally liable for harm caused if they overshoot this pollution limit. They have also agreed that there is no legal obligation to clean up existing emissions, that is, to remove and restore the climate system. In situations where removal of existing emissions occurs, it usually is used as a justification to enable further emissions. Furthermore, states have decided that future generational justice and climate justice are not directly relevant to deciding the quantum or the size of pollution that they are allowing themselves to continue with. In short, the focus of this regime is not comprehensive, legally mandated responsibilities or duties to protect and restore an already seriously degraded, shared planetary climate system. This is a pattern that is repeated across international law and national law. And what we see is that the Earth system is divided up into bits and pieces. These bits and pieces are treated as resources or sinks. Problems are treated in isolation from one another. And the solutions usually look like more resource exploitation. When there is international cooperation, it is normally of a very weak nature. And we might be correct to sometimes think of these legal regimes as virtually voluntary. This is one of the reasons why the UN Secretary General has stated, and I'd like to quote him, he has stated that we are on the highway to hell with our foot still on the accelerator. So the question for us is, how can the common heritage concept help release us from this incredibly dangerous pattern? It's a pattern that leads us into a misconception about the scale and the urgency and the complexity of harm that has already occurred to the Earth system and to the climate system. So to unpack this a little bit more, I'd like to first look at the concept of the commons, and then I'll move on to the concept of heritage. So first, commons. We might think of the commons as a thing that is shared by all of us for the benefit of all of us. It belongs to everyone. It is owned by nobody. It can be tangible or it can be an intangible commons. A tangible commons could be a nature protection reserve. An intangible commons could be an innovative shared idea or indeed a language. When the climate system is recognized as a legal commons, then we can see it for what it really is. It is an indivisible, invisible, yet intangible, shared functioning system. It obeys no territory boundaries. It is something different from physical territory. And yet, what states do within their individual territory will have a direct impact on this commons. And that impact can be activities that are both negative or positive. Negative activities, of course, we can think about deforestation and, of course, high greenhouse gas emissions. Positive actions that states can take within their territory include large-scale nature restoration and protection. When the climate system becomes a legal commons, we have a legal basis to create a regime that ensures that we capture both negative acts and positive acts that impact this climate system. Applied to states, this means that their territorial sovereignty must be exercised to ensure the long-term stability of the climate system for the benefit of all. And this will be a matter of non-negotiable legal obligation or responsibility. Those obligations will be determined by science, not by national self-interests. Sovereignty is not displaced. Sovereignty is not given up. Sovereignty is qualified by collective responsibilities for the common good. When this system is implemented, states can be audited to see the extent to which they are meeting these responsibilities or not. Now, it must be said at this point that the detail of the management regime for the climate system as a commons will be hugely important, and it must be embedded in international governance structures, but equally it must be nested within national and domestic law, and local law. Let's move on to the idea of heritage. In addition to governing the climate system as a commons, we need a legal concept that changes our relationship with nature, creates a very different relationship from what we already have. And this is where the concept of heritage is vital. Heritage implies or speaks of something that is precious, that is sacred, is of enormous value. It speaks of something that is passed down between generations. We might think of this as a legacy. And a legacy imposes obligations on present generations, and those obligations are owed both to the past and to the future to ensure that that heritage is protected and restored and passed on. We might think in law of present generations as holding in trust the heritage on behalf of present and future generations for the benefit of present and future generations. This qualifies present use by those obligations. At the heart of heritage is a very profound moral imperative. And this is a moral imperative recognized by many of the world's diverse cultural traditions, spiritual and religious traditions, and of course, Indigenous peoples. They also understand that we must care for both nature and people together because our existence and our destinies are intertwined. We cannot have one without the other. Applied to states, this means when they exercise their territorial sovereignty, they must also account for intergenerational justice. And they must account for global justice, for we cannot manage a common heritage unless we pay particular regard and have particular concern for equity and justice. This is not an optional extra. This is essential to our task. Applied to states, when they do not, they must demonstrate how they meet these justice claims, how their actions fulfill these justice claims. And when they don't, they can be held to account for failure to do so. I'd like to leave you now with a thought. In the words of Judge Weir-Mantry, former Vice President of the International Court of Justice, we need to urgently transform our legal system so that it serves the greater interests of humanity and planetary welfare. Declaring a stable climate system a common heritage is an innovative legal step in this direction. But we must lead our leaders. And we can do this by demonstrating what it means to be a good Earth trustee. And in this spirit, I invite you to please support the world's youth as they take their claims for climate justice to the world's highest court. This could be one of the most important climate change cases in history. And together we can ensure that their voices are heard. Thank you.